What is going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Crash Course Metal Show. We got with us here a very special guest. We got another YouTuber, music YouTuber here. Now, I told you guys for this "What is Metal? What is Heavy Metal" series, we're going to be bringing in everyone from the metal genre community, whether that's fans, whether that's other music YouTubers, whether that's band members, other journalists. But we got with us here our buddy from Super Cool Radio, Matthew Thomas. What is going on, man?
How's it going? Thank you so much for inviting me on this awesome YouTube channel that you have. It's an honor to be here.
Hey, it's always fun, man. Whenever I come on your channel or you come on here, we always have a good time. And that's at the end of the day, what's most important. So, and I think I'm going to be trying to bring Matt out of his uh shell just slightly, and asking some of these questions here that we have been asking in this series of what is heavy metal. But Matt, please, can you kind of just give us a little bit of an origin story for you, and then also what is the origins of heavy metal to you?
Well, I appreciate your time because, obviously I do many interviews, so I talk to a bunch of people, but I don't really get to express most of the time my outlook and my beliefs and stuff. So I
Right.
appreciate the opportunity here.
Hell yes.
As you know very well, I've met, as from our conversations and stuff, like I definitely lean more on the punk side. That is kind of my go-to, even though Alice Cooper is one of my favorites, and he's, I would say, more in the rock category, even though some of his music does go into metal.
Mm-hmm.
But growing up, so obviously I listened to a lot of music that my brother got me into, so that's how I discovered Alice Cooper, Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, things of that nature
Okay.
growing up. And then like probably 17, 18 is when I really got into punk music. But with saying that, like metal was always kind of there, even if I didn't really like listen to a lot of it. It would still come up occasionally. I know my brother was, like really big into Limp Bizkit because I think everybody growing up in their teenage years was, listen to Limp Bizkit at some point in their life, and if you didn't, you're lying. But so yeah, kind of, even though, is that considered metal? Is that considered trash? That is up to anyone who listens. But um I listen to that, I listen to like Korn. And as I said, like Alice Cooper's got some heavier albums like Brutal Planet.
Right.
So it kind of, that was always kind of there. And honestly, you could probably make the case for like Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin too, because at the time that was probably considered heavier music, even if
Yeah.
it wasn't considered metal. So that was always kind of there when I was growing up. I wouldn't say I really got into metal, at least like I listened to a lot more metal than when I did when I was like 15, 16 years old. Like obviously Ice Nine Kills is an awesome band.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen them live and I want to see them live again because they're amazing. So like I listen to that, listen to Ginger. So like
Okay.
kind of that kind of stuff I listen to. Again, not always on, I don't have it on repeat or anything like that, but at least growing up, I would say kind of I got into listening to metal more on a more not a daily basis, but on a more semi-regular basis,
Okay.
probably starting my early 20s. I'm 26 right now.
What?
Okay.
So kind of the last probably 4 or 5 years is when I kind of made a conscious effort to listen to different genres, metal being one of those.
Mm-hmm.
So and definitely it's great workout music too. To listen to some metal like that gets you like Motorhead, Ministry, like that's some of my go-to workout music.
Okay. All right. Interesting. So definitely you brought up like Limp Bizkit and Korn, like of the new metal style, of subgenre. Is that one of your go-tos of sub metal in the sub metal genre?
I would say growing up it was
Okay.
because my brother listened to it, so I by default listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
I would say like I still listen to Korn, like that's like great band to see live, by the way. I saw them with Rob Zombie.
Okay.
I would say I still listen to them. I kind of grew out of even though I still wear fitted hats, I kind of grew out of listening to Limp Bizkit. I don't really anymore. I think that's like in your teenage, like 14 to 18, 19. Once you start getting 20, I don't know, I kind of started growing out of it. But I
Right.
still listen to some new metal like occasionally, like my one radio station here plays break stuff almost all the time, seems like when I turn my car on. So, Limp Bizkit's still there, but I've kind of evolved a little bit more in my metal taste.
Okay. So now you said about like Alice Cooper wasn't or isn't metal now when we look back 50 years now. But when, he came out and like Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, that was the heavy shit at the time. So, I mean, it is kind of like this weird thing. Like as time keeps going and going, and metal just keeps getting the genre just keeps getting broader and broader in sound. I think it's harder to really place bands, especially early bands, in a more specific type subgenre. I don't know if you wanted to touch on that as far as that goes, and then also you kind of have the comparison here of so Black Sabbath, or Led Zeppelin, or maybe even Van Halen. Who was like the first true metal band?
Okay, well, I will get to that because I got some thoughts on that. But
Okay,
as for like the genre getting broader, definitely, and like, but we're seeing that with like every genre: country music, rock music, pop music, metal is no exception. So it's kind of bridging out more that people are including more different elements in their metal especially. You're seeing more like sometimes like I'll yeah, love them or hate them, falling in reverse. They have some metal elements to it, but then they do a bunch of other genres too. And
right.
we're starting to see some artists take that kind of flavor to
Mm-hmm.
metal as well. So I think it's definitely getting more broader with stuff, but that's also I think the music in general
Okay.
that nobody's really following like I said, like you have to sound like this, you have to do this, which I think has its pros and cons, with which I think that's another conversation, which I I I will leave it at that, that it does have its pros and cons of stuff. I think people like the familiar stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
then people also like to break out from their familiar as well. So
Right.
pros and cons with that.
Yeah.
But now getting to the origins of heavy metal, I was thinking about I had actually Van Halen and Black Sabbath written down.
Okay.
But my answer that because I've kind of had this kind of conversation in private with some of my friends as well. I always go with Black Sabbath because that was I think 1969, 1970, I think was their
Right.
first album
Yep.
around there.
Yep.
So to me they're kind of like the precursors to that metal sound.
Mm-hmm.
I will say sound instead of metal music because I think there's definitely way more precursors to leading up to Black Sabbath too.
Okay.
But I would say for that sound of that classic metal music, it is Black Sabbath. But I do think Van Halen, that like and even like AC/DC too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think if you grew up in that time, again, we have 50 years of knowledge,
Yeah.
to draw from.
Yeah.
But I think again, growing up, like even just talking to like my dad who grew up in like the 60s and 70s, he was like AC/DC was like some of the heaviest music,
Right.
out there. And so was Van Halen and things like that. So I think you got to kind of look at it from that time period too. Of they
Yeah.
didn't know that we were gonna get, we're gonna get the hair metal, and then we're gonna get to like even
Death. Yeah, get
yeah,
death metal and Children of Bodom and Cradle of Filth eventually. Slipknot, like that. Yes. Yep.
yeah, and keeps going. So Gojira at the Olympics. So it's like
Yeah.
it keeps going. But again, we have that retrospective
Yeah.
of looking at it through hindsight. But yeah, growing up, man, I would say Black Sabbath if you're going for the true sound. But there's so many precursors to that. And like honestly, you can even trace it back to like blues music to rock and roll to metal. Oops, I hit my mic. It all kind of evolves from there. And I think definitely blues is a huge and you see a Black Sabbath too. Like they got some blues elements in there.
Oh yeah.
AC/DC's got some blues elements in there as well that like you can trace it back there. But band wise, sound wise, Black Sabbath.
Okay. All right. That's a fair point. Very fair choice.
Hey, Justin Adams from Ocean here, and you guys are watching the one and only Crash Course Metal Show.
Hey Matt, so can you kind of tell me now? You did say that you are more on the punk side, but now you have been venturing more into metal, even like in your channel. You do a lot of interviewing with punk and metal. So can you kind of give us some of the albums that you grew up with that really kind of was like you can name some punk stuff too, but like as far as like what made you really like metal or was like, okay, I kind of really am more of a metalhead now, or like I want to be more of a metalhead.
Oh gosh. Well definitely The first Black Sabbath album,
Okay.
obviously, that was the first album I listened to by Black Sabbath, which, by the way, genuinely terrified me because it just first time listening that again, being younger, it was like, man, this is a trip. Like, it definitely
Oh
scared me
yeah.
a little bit,
It
but
still has that atmosphere to it, even to this
oh
day,
yeah.
you know.
Oh yeah, no, it's a great album, and it's my like top, it's my favorite Black Sabbath album. So that one for sure, because like the rest of them, again, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, another phenomenal album, but they kind of fall off a little bit in my opinion. But
Okay.
anyway,
All right, yeah.
um, so that one for sure. Actually, Ice Nine Kills,
Yeah.
'cause I saw them. I want to say it was 2019. I want to say. So I got into them with the Silver Scream, which is one of my favorite. If you're just talking metal, one of my favorites. Ginger, as I mentioned, I would say Macro was a really great album, and they're alive in I think Australia. I want to say their last like live album
Okay.
was really good too. So I'd definitely say those again, kind of more recent because obviously I've been getting into metal more. But Alice Cooper Brutal Planet is actually one of my favorite Alice Cooper albums in general.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, Brutal Planet is a phenomenal song. I really enjoy it. He played that live one of the tours I saw him. He opened with that song and it was amazing. So yeah,
Now,
that
now, do you like that album because of the more industrial feel to it? Possibly.
I think so. It definitely was different from what he was going because again, he a lot of his albums leading up to that was more on like the hard rock side,
Right.
with a few exceptions, like
The
Flush the
last,
Fashion was a little
yeah,
bit
and the Last
more new
Temptation,
wave.
he started going in that direction of
Yeah,
Brutal Planet. You know.
yeah, which I think it was a natural progress. And again, for how big, kind of that sound was, with Korn, Marilyn Manson,
Yeah.
you had that whole kind of era because it came out in 2000. I think it was definitely different for him, but also he matched his kind of style, especially lyrically, very well with like that heavier industrial
Right.
sound. But
Right.
also, I think Brutal Planet is one of my favorite one of my favorite songs if we're just looking at Alice Cooper.
Okay. All right. Interesting. So that's always interesting to ask that because you just coming into metal somewhat recently, like within you didn't grow up with it per se, as a whole. Like you did have a couple bands and a couple albums, but just being totally submersed in the field of the genre of heavy metal. I admit that's why I was interested in asking that. And also, you were younger than me. I'm 32. I think I'm 32. So,
You had to
so
think about that one.
yeah, I did. It all blends together after a while. But because like I don't talk to too many people, certainly on the channel anyway, of people that are younger than me. So that's interesting to see you coming in a little bit later in life yet too into the metal field. And because when you were in high school, do you remember talking to anyone other than maybe like one or two people about heavy metal, or was it kind of even not even on your mind other than say the Limp Bizkit and Corns of the world? And can you kind of like tell us what high school was like as far as the metal field and even punk field too?
Honestly, I never really had like music conversations. And I never really got into like fully immersed in music until after high school, which is kind
Okay.
of weird for what I do now. It's
Right.
very, very weird. But I was definitely more of a loner in high school. I didn't really talk too much. Like I had like my small group of friends,
Right.
but like never really ventured out too much. I never really talked. I was really like quiet and shy, honestly, which again is funny for what I do now is you
Yeah.
have to have a personality, and I definitely didn't back then. But
Right.
I mean, the few friends I did, like we talked a little bit. Like my one friend was into corn, so like we, listened to stuff like that, or like talked about stuff like that. But then Slipknot, because Slipknot's, that's like kind of a high school. I still listen to
Right.
Slipknot. Slipknot's awesome, but probably those two are kind of the main two. If I were to talk, it would be one specific friend, and we would talk about music like that. But as music in general. I didn't really talk too much. Too much. I think kind of my generation, not to knock them too much, but music didn't like the people listen to it, but I don't know if they value it like kind of you or me kind of thing where like people listen to it, but they don't like fully deep dive immerse and like, hey, I love this artist. I want to know everything about them kind of
Yes.
thing. I think there's still people like that, but I think it's kind of fewer and far between.
They don't go out and buy the CDs or the albums and stuff like that. Yeah, because I never really thought of it like that because there, like when I was in high school, there were kids that had ACDC shirts on, like Cradle of Filth shirts, like heavier stuff of the time too. Stuff that I wasn't personally into. Like I do like Cradle of Filth. I do like Slipknot. I like these like the modern bands of 2006, 2007. But that wasn't me though. Really, like I was wearing shirts of like hair metal, 80s stuff for the most part. And it's just interesting to see because I don't remember too much. Now, iPods were starting to come around. So, like, you have like 5 years on the technology side over me. So, like, there were some kids that still went out and bought a couple CDs, but it wasn't anything like it was 20 years ago. And so that is interesting too because the only way you could tell someone was in the music was what they wore, their shirts and stuff, and not by, hey, look at this new album I just have, that I just bought. So I might have been really the only one out of a handful, maybe, of that really was like, hey, man, this weekend I'm going and getting on eBay or going to the record store and buying some shit. So that I think that is another disconnect, like you were saying to your point of our generation, my generation, and the one before me, yours. And it's like, yeah, it's something is missing. There's something missing here to connect to music. Now, everyone I talk to loves music. Everyone loves music. So, but where is that? Is everyone just in Normieville when it comes to that? Like, is it just there's no true fans anymore outside of, a handful of people? And does that kind of, you can kind of answer that question, but does that kind of leak into the live scene? Do you want to kind of touch on that?
Sure, yeah. So, well, answering the first part, I think there are fans of, but like people like 5 or 6 bands. Like they could really like that kind of like limit of bands,
Mm-hmm.
but then they don't really venture out too much outside of that.
Okay,
So,
yeah,
so that's kind of what I think that like people may really enjoy 1 or 2 bands, but that's like the 1 or 2 bands they really listen to kind of thing. Then
yeah.
again, just speculating. Don't want to not trying to generalize anything,
I
but
mean, that makes sense though. That does probably play a part of it because I never really thought of it like that. I'm either you don't listen to music or you go balls deep and listen to thousands of bands. Like there, but there is like there's normal people that only have 5 bands that they even know of, and they only play maybe 5 songs of them, or they just know all their albums. There's even different scales within that type of normal person listen to music.
oh yeah, exactly. Or they put on like a Spotify, kind of playlist and
Yeah,
just kind of listen to it, but don't actually like absorb it.
yeah,
They
digest
kind of
it and
just
all.
in the
Yeah,
background kind of thing.
yep,
So that's kind of where I think kind of quite a few people land because like again, you or me, we'll talk like, oh, do you know this band? And like,
yeah.
nope, never heard of it. Okay, cool.
But I'll go check it out. Like we want the new stuff. Like we want to hear something new, like every week, every day. We can't listen to the same 5 songs over and over and be happy.
Oh, exactly. Or like like if I talk to people about like who I've interviewed
Mhm.
and they're like, yeah, I don't know any of those bands. So I was like, well, cool. Well, if you like to, you can check out this interview. And
Yeah,
quite a few people say no, but that's all right.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
we can only do so much. But kind of going into your point with the live music now, this is what I've really noticed probably in the last couple years with like live shows is again like I'm mostly pressed for a lot of these. I do go to some shows for fun, but I mostly party their photographer or I'm interviewing a band, like I'm doing things. But what I have noticed is there's a lot more people on their phone, not like taking photos or videos, but like just looking at their phone, scrolling on Facebook, something like that,
Yeah.
I was not aware of that.
Okay.
while the band is playing. And
Really?
I don't like that trend. I really don't.
Yeah.
Uh, to me, like if you're there, you paid money to see, like, and especially like I've seen like people at Alice Cooper shows or like some 41 shows, and like they're on their phone. It's like you've paid to be here, you've paid to park, you've waited in line, enjoy the show.
Yes. Yeah. Your attention should be on the show, on the entertainment at hand. You can go home or do anything after the show on Facebook, whatever, whatever you do to occupy your time, your attention. And yeah, when you're at a show, it's like same thing like when we talk about baseball. I go to a baseball game, I'm not doing anything other than watching baseball, the game. I am not leaving early and I am not getting there late either. So, I don't know if it's just being the money factor too, and then also the entertainment factor of it. I don't know because I go to live shows too, but I can't say I've seen the phone thing enough to like bring it up. So like I'm glad I haven't seen that, but I can totally get that though. I can totally see people probably doing that, especially for like probably for like opening bands that they're not or bands that they're not there to see too. I think that could be a play in that. But anything else like with the like live shows, like I mean, heavy metal will never die, but as a live scene, man, I think we are on life support, and I don't know where the end is coming. Is it just because there's just too much entertainment, like you said, on people on their phones, people playing video games at home, especially our generation? Like, is it just too much entertainment? I mean, movie theaters are going out of business now because there's just too much entertainment everywhere, and live music, just in general, not just heavy metal, but just in general, live music is taking a downturn. Anything you want to touch on that?
Well, I think there's a lot of factors going into. I agree with your sentiment that live music in general is taking a dive. Unfortunately, now I do think a couple factors for that. Like obviously with the movie theater, kind of similar, that I think entertainment is way more accessible
Yeah,
now. Like, why go to a movie theater, have to pay for some very salty popcorn and sit in sticky seats, for a movie that I could watch on HBO Max. Not that I can afford HBO Max, but
but
you know,
there's accessibility to it though. A
exactly.
movie or just a movie in general, maybe not that movie, but just a movie, entertainment in general. Yeah,
Exactly, exactly. I'm just saying how broke I am. But but going with the music though, some people just like listening to music and again don't need that live music experience, even though I think people definitely should go to live music and support not only the venues and the bands, but make connections with other people who go to these live shows. But with that being said, I do think the pandemic played a factor in that when there was no live touring or music for what year and a half, 2 years, that hurt a lot of the bands, that hurt a lot of the venues, and that kind of changed people's mindset of you know kind of either they really want live shows to be back or they didn't really miss it too much and like it's they
forgot
don't go to
about it.
live shows anymore.
Yeah,
So I think there's a lot of factors going into that. Plus, I mean, how much is a Motley Crue show now? Is like $400 a ticket or something crazy
yeah,
like that.
Look like garbage.
yeah,
You have those kind of legacy bands where it's going to be so much money that like I saw them live on their last final tour, 2015, so or 2014, and you kind of get that sentiment of, oh, I've seen them live before, like I don't need to see them again. And there's unfortunately there's some acts who I've seen live, or okay, cool, I saw them live.
yeah.
I won't see them again, kind of thing.
Right.
I kind of get their stick.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Like when you're talking about like a live scene, I don't add in the legacy bands or legacy shows because that doesn't carry a live scene. Like, sure, you go to a Motley Crue show or an AC/DC show, a Metallica show. The shit's packed. The stadium's packed. Where are all these people, on the low level bars to theaters, like the mid tier and low tier venues and bands? Like, okay, they like this music. They apparently like this atmosphere to an extent to be there, even to be at that show. So like, why don't you just go down the road and see a cool live original band? Like, what is the missing piece here when it comes to that? Where's the disconnect? Because that's why like legacy bands don't carry a scene so anymore. Anyway, I would say so. Like, it's like where is the love for these up and coming bands, even too, that are doing live original stuff? Because I don't know about in your neck of the woods. Where exactly are you? Or not exactly, but give us a general area.
Yes, this is my address, but no, no, I'm based out of South Bend, Indiana, northern Indiana,
Okay.
almost at the border.
Okay. So have you seen anything in the venue side of things as far as cover bands, like going against tribute bands, going against original bands. Can you kind of talk to what you see out there your way?
Yeah, so definitely a lot of the places, like, well, no, I won't say a lot, but some of the venues are definitely switching over where they just exclusively book like cover bands or tribute bands,
Okay.
which
Yep.
I get it. Again, kind of what I was going back earlier, familiar music, people like, not everyone's there to see original music, unfortunately. And it seems like they want to hear some Aerosmith, or some Journey or something like that.
Right.
So yeah, definitely a lot of cover bands, a lot of tribute bands. And again, I get it because it's something familiar and so I think that's part of the reason why people do that. But yeah, and so that's kind of what I see with the venue side of things, especially like Indiana. I've talked to some bands where they say it's hard to find shows just because there is so many cover and tribute bands.
Right.
Which again, like, have I interviewed a few cover and tribute bands? Yes, I have. Like, kind of thing. They're still part of, music,
Right.
but unfortunately, there is that kind of shift. And as you were talking about, like the legacy bands that they sell out these huge arenas and stadiums, but like I've gone to shows and I'm the only person there at
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
place. So it's like the $1 million question of, will people why will people go to see Motley Crue, Metallica, etc., but won't go 5 minutes from their house for a $10 cover to see original band?
Yes.
I don't
That
know. I've been
play
asking myself that.
yeah, that play the same style, same influence of that Motley Crue band or Metallica, whatever they like. It's not like we're asking someone that loves Motley Crue to go see a Cradle of Filth concert. Even it like that style band. It's still the same. Wild Street would have fit in the hair metal scene back in the '80s.
Oh yeah.
You think I can get anyone that likes the '80s hair metal stuff? That's older now, that grew up in that time, go check out Wild Street. Sure, I get a couple, but not like it should be, and that
Oh yeah.
that's another question I kind of want to talk about is who's to blame really for this? I mean, sure, there's really you could put blame everywhere on this question, but on my side of things here, I tend to see a lot of the older generation not really given original music anymore a chance. They want to hear the same five songs that they hear on the radio or that they grew up on, which I get. I mean, AC/DC is great, Metallica is great, Motley Crue's cool. I get it. I get why those songs are in your head. You grew up with it. You made plenty memories with it. But if you actually like the music and such, now why don't you want to go support young kids younger than us now, which is crazy to say, younger than us, that hey, the next 10 years, metal might die live scene wise because there's no one there to support it. Now, yes, the young generation gets blamed too because, like we said, there's no live scene or like for live music. There's really no scene for it hardly anywhere. Now, country, yes, there is some of that, and I guess rap. I never been to a rap local concert, so I
Yeah.
don't know. But it just seems like it's missing out everywhere. So I don't know. Do you want to touch on that at all? Like, where do you think some of this blame, especially for metal now? Like, sure, like for metal, like you would think the people that grew up with metal want this shit to keep going, and people always ask, "Hey, why isn't there any good music nowadays from kids and stuff?" Oh, there is. You just don't want to hear it or radio. Like that's another big problem, I think. Radio. Uh, want to touch on any of that?
Yeah, I think there's a few different things, a lot to unpack there. First one, first one I'll start with is the kind of just audience in general. Again, I don't like to blame audience because they keep my show running,
Right, right.
but I think people again, like I'm learning about communications and people, with that choose familiar language that they know.
Mm-hmm,
I kind of apply that to people choose familiar music that they know.
mm-hmm.
And if it's outside of that, it's not familiar to them. And either some people embrace it, but I do think a lot of people don't. And again, if it's outside of what the 5, 6 bands they listen to, they just don't care as much or don't pay attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, going along with that, I think there's also a lot of gatekeeping that goes on in the music community, unfortunately. Why are some of these bands that I think are amazing, they're very talented, but they don't get like the same shots or have the same opportunities that some other bands do.
Mhm.
And I do think there's definitely some gatekeeping that goes on that. I definitely think there's some, money is definitely another factor with stuff. I won't go too much into that, but I think um, but I do definitely think that kind of mindset of we like this stuff and we're going to keep everybody out who is not that kind of thing.
Okay.
And unfortunately, I see that a lot online with stuff where people don't accept other people in the community for some of the most arbitrary reasons. Now, sometimes it's legit, but a lot of the times it's just because we don't know you and we don't want, which happens to me sometimes too, unfortunately.
Hmm.
I think that's part of it as well. And again, I think people are kind of short-sighted with this because once these legacy bands or some of these metal bands run out, or retire, move on, whatever, who's got to keep that torch going?
Yeah.
If you kicked everybody else out, where is metal going to be? Who's going to, keep that up? Now, this is not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in the next 5 years, but 10, 15, 20 years, who's going to be the metal band you hear on the radio?
Yeah.
It's not Imagine Dragons, even if they want to tell you. Um, oops, did I go a little too far? Anyway, but you know what I mean, though. Like you, even like listening to like when I turn on the local rock station, they got like, you know, some of that kind of, I won't hate on Imagine Dragons too much, but that kind of music where I don't consider it rock or metal.
Okay.
It's kind of in that like hybrid kind of pop with occasional guitars kind of thing, which
Okay.
we're seeing a lot of. Like, is that metal? No, it's not. It's some kind of different form genre, which is fine. But again, if you're just looking at the true metal, a lot of that is starting to die out.
Right. Yeah. A lot of the golden era, even I would even say like even after like the new metal subgenre came, there wasn't really anything after that. Okay, symphonic metal seems to be the next big thing. I would say that I have faith in and like, oh my god, there might actually be a scene for this eventually here. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't know where or what the next 10 years looks like because it don't matter what kind of metal show I go to, whether that's a hair metal style show, a death metal style show, extreme metal. There's problems going on. And as far as like people showing up to begin with, but also just like bands backstabbing each other too. There's a lot of that going on. I don't know. I just feel like a lot of it is money driven too, with the industry, which is a problem. And I think in the golden era, early 80s, 70s and stuff, like there wasn't as much of that as it is, the past 20 years or so. Everyone's trying to get rich quick, which everyone knows nowadays. If you're in a band, in a metal band now, you're not, you have a better chance of hitting the lottery than you do is making this your living anymore. So yeah, very, very strange times that we live in for metal the last 20 years. Yeah.
I do think the money thing, well, it's like any kind of industry now. People are just looking for how much money can I make? They
Mm-hmm.
don't care about quality. They don't care about the future. Just like how much money can I make right now? I see that a lot and it's not just music, not just entertainment, in general, corporations,
Yeah.
everything like that. It's how much money can we make and with the least amount of effort of work. I do
Yeah.
think is unfortunately what we're seeing, and they kind of apply that to the music industry because it is an industry, it is a business.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why people are just going with what is guaranteed to make money now. And I see a lot with YouTube channels too. Like,
Yeah.
I watched some car YouTube channel, and one guy he left a company or left a channel, and he's like, they just wanted us to make videos that were like, we know this is going to make money, and they didn't want to branch out, they didn't want to do anything, and that's what's kind of hindering that. Nobody wants to take a chance anymore. That like, it's all about this is guaranteed to do things and guaranteed to either get attention or get money or whatever the goal
Yeah.
is.
Help your
This
bottom line.
Exactly. And that's why I think it's kind of fallen into a rut of creatively and, just not just creatively, but just like in the shows, you kind of see the same bills too, like same people are touring together kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's guaranteed to make money instead of let's try to do something a little bit different.
Yeah. And even at the lower scene, for a bill, a live bill. There's bands like as much as I like to have fun and party and stuff at a show, I don't want to see four bands either on a Friday, Saturday night at like a local club. Okay. Original bands. Now, two, okay, that's cool. But when you start getting four, especially when they're starting to not be the same subgenre, that's tough. And that kind of to the point of we're struggling to bring people in. And it's like, but okay, but I know like half the people I'll go out with, they don't want to see a death metal band, but they want to see a hair metal band and vice versa. Like what and I'm they're not gonna pay to go see one band at 11 o'clock at night when they don't want to see anything from 8 to 10 before that band comes on. It's just weird. Everything seems to be against the live scene. But you did bring up a point though of technology and the entertainment. Do you think since we live in the technology, it's so much easier for a band to make an album, to get known or somewhat known, to get their music out there and to make an album? Do you think that hurts or helps? Like because we see so many more bands than we have before ever in the genre just come up every day. It seems like a new band, a new band, new album, new album because of the technology. So easy to do. And does that hurt the scene as far as it's harder to find the cream rise into the top as far as, hey, it's harder to find a good band now, because there's so much stuff to go through and people's attention spans are so short. It's harder to find that great band now than it was 20 plus years ago.
I would say as a listener, it is more difficult to find just bands that you enjoy more because there is so much stuff out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say like I'm glad, making music is more accessible now,
Yep.
which there is pros and cons with that. Yes, anyone can release music. They don't need a label. They can get their own equipment. They don't necessarily need a studio.
Mm-hmm.
With that being said, though, I think it's harder to get quality control because if again, not hating on anybody here, but if you're doing everything yourself, and I've definitely run in this myself, you don't look at other factors sometimes, and you don't consider all the options. And if you're just like, yep, gonna do this, and you just go 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 go, and they go, oh wait a minute, this could have been should have done this could have been better, things like that.
Yeah.
Now, with that being said, you can release anyone can release music nowadays. They can record and release, which puts some power back into people. There's a lot of independent bands who I've interviewed, who I've talked
Oh
to,
yeah. Yeah.
but they're also you have to keep that quality. And I think that's what the biggest challenge now is. You can do everything, but you need this quality to go along with it, at least my opinion. Now, as a listener of all this, it is hard to find because I get a lot of music submissions. I get a lot of people reaching out to me, and I don't, you know, I don't respond to all my emails because I've just been so busy. But when I was trying to actively keep up with all these emails, there'd be a lot of bands that go, hey, look, it's not really my style. Like, I appreciate you reaching out. I was really nice. But then they would say why, and now I got a choice, do I just go, hey, not really for me, or do I go, look, dude, this sounded flat, this like, which
Yeah.
I don't like to do too much because again,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah. It's not
not a
fun.
musician,
Yeah.
but you kind of have that choice. And as a listener too, like if stuff doesn't sound good, just like if a podcast doesn't sound good, are you going to listen to it? No. Is that same thing for music? Yes, it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm with you with that. Like, you don't it's hard to tell people, hey, this doesn't sound good, or it's just I mean, sometimes it's just not your thing too. It's just, hey, it is what it is. But yeah, I get that. And I just think with the technology, it's so easy. Well, it's easier certainly now than ever before for a band that's just not that good to begin with to go and make an album and start cluttering the YouTube algorithm or just the music, the whatever genre they're in, subgenre they're in, that space. And it's just harder to find the next great band, which hey, everyone has go take a shot. Take a shot, fly your flag, see what it see. Hey, you might what bring metal back to the to the mainstream. You never know. But it just seems like more times than not, though, it's like, damn, okay, all right, now I just went through 5 bands and I'm just not digging any of these. So that just took 2-3 hours of my time that I could have been looking at something else, So it's that balance though. It's the balance. Sometimes, and at the end of the day, us fans and like YouTube people or just fans of the music, we just cannot get to everything. That's just, if you try to do that, you're gonna get burned out and you're gonna hate
You're gonna
doing
go crazy.
yeah, yeah. So it is certainly a balance going on, and yeah, teach their own. Now, and at the end of the day, that's what it is. So Matt, moving on here. Now, when as far as the live scene, do you think back in the golden age, like certainly the hair metal time, it was mainstream. Everyone was at a show, women, men. Now, I think a lot of the success from hair metal can be, especially the live scene and the lower live scenes, can be attested to women being at the shows. Can you kind of talk? I mean, do you have anything per se to say anything on that? And I will say, if you don't really have too much of an answer on that, I kind of have a thought for modern times. There's more women in bands and fronting bands now than ever before. And I kind of thought that that would have helped bring in more women to the audience. I can't say that I've seen that personally to where I thought it would have been a game changer, like it was back in the 80s, where there was maybe 1-to-1 ratio for men to women at a show. And, can you kind of touch on that on the pieces that you want?
So I've been thinking about that while you're talking, and like I've interviewed quite a few like female fronted bands. I've been to a lot of female fronted shows where it's just exclusively like female fronted bands.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to think of like the audience and the crowd, and there's still like decent like amount of women, but like definitely I think guys out are the majority of that
Mm-hmm.
still. But to go along with like the 80s was like a huge, like such a popular era. They got like national TV coverage.
Oh
Almost
yeah,
everyone, knew at least one band in the hair metal category
yeah.
back then, which I think now, like, yes, there's a lot more women, which I'm glad they're getting, because there's so many talent. I could list
Oh yeah.
many, many talented female musicians on like ranging from the national scale to like the more local club scene.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many. But I think what's kind of lacking from that is like how much media coverage do they actually get? Like again, as I said, with the hair metal, they got a ton of media coverage, they had documentaries, they had news coverage, they had everything. And now like we have social media, we have so many more outlets, but do they really get the news coverage? Like any kind of press coverage? And I like if you were to compare it from the 80s to now, I think they get less.
Right. Yeah. Yes, certainly. And I think as time is going on, metal is just not the popular thing too, just in general. So that kind of hurts too. Cause like if there's no fans there to really show the show or show pictures of it or post it online or whatever, there's just not many people that even know about it to begin with to go there, women. So it is tough because back in the 80s, they liked the guys. The girls liked the guys. They thought they were the shit, pretty boys and stuff like that. But also it was hooky stuff, hooky music to it as well. So like you said, they did have the nationality, MTV. They did have, they had everything helping them compared to today. So that makes sense. And I don't know. It's an interesting. I just thought with having more women in a band than ever before, now that would have just helped, the female population to come out to more shows. I don't know what the disconnect there would be. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we'll have a female on the show here. Maybe they can answer that question. But just from what I see, and seems to be what you see too, there's some kind of disconnect. It's certainly not as potent as what I thought it would have been. You know.
No, I think I'm trying to think back to some of the shows I've been to, and like I obviously there's still women at the shows, but it's just not as much I would say for the guys still make up the with
Yeah.
that. But yeah, I think you might have to have a female musician on just to see like what there is. But I will say like from like the female musicians I've talked to, they
Mhm.
definitely there's like a tight knit group that they definitely support each other and things like that.
Right. Yeah.
Uh, but as for shows and stuff, and again, like I will say like definitely caveat here, a lot of the shows that I've gone to that for the venue size, sometimes there's like 10, 20 people. So like that doesn't the not many people are showing up in general,
Yes.
so that doesn't help.
The
Yeah.
odds are against you right from the start.
Exactly.
Depending, okay, yeah, and that makes, I mean, and that's pretty much what I see too for the most part. Now you do get your, you know, uh, exceptions. Like Dirty Honey, for example.
Which
They
they're
still,
really great.
oh
Like,
yeah, I mean, they pack a room. Like
oh yeah.
they will sell out a mid tier bar or venue. They will sell that out, and which is great, which is still gives me hope, but that should be more times than not, sadly. And when you only get a handful of people, it's just so disheartening too. And I can only imagine it's so disheartening for the band too, and it sucks. So Matt, I think I got maybe one more question. We kind of did touch on this, and with the state of heavy metal that it is in now, what does the next 10 years kind of look like for us as far as a community?
Well, I will say as a community, we definitely got to stick together. We have to support each other. Even if you're not a huge fan of a band, like that's fine.
Mhm.
But at least if you go to a show, make sure you see all the bands. Even if again, like, hey, this band's not my favorite, but then the next band, like, oh my God, this is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm a fan. So definitely if you go to shows, see all the bands there. With also that being said, if you do like a band, show their support, buy a hat, buy a merch, listen to their music, show your support because they definitely need it. Because as you know, you and me know very well, they don't make very much money.
No.
If you're not like a national touring international band, like you're not making very much money. So
Mhm.
buy a shirt, show their support. Wear it if you're going wherever appropriate. Like don't wear it at well, you could wear it at a wedding. I won't say not to, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Show show your support. But over the next 10, I don't really know. Can't really predict what metal's going to do. I can see the trend of, there's some really popular bands that are still going to carry that metal flag, but what is the next generation going to look like in the next 10 to 15 years? I'm not sure. Will there always be those standout metal bands? Of course. Do
Mhm.
I think we're relying a lot on legacy bands? Unfortunately, at this time, yes. Like those bands, like Disturbed, Anthrax. Again, I've seen those bands live. I like those bands. Not throwing shade or anything, but at the same time, you gotta support the up and coming bands because that is you're gonna be your next generation, your next Disturbed, your next Anthrax. That
Yes.
kind of level, not style, but level.
Mhm.
You got to do that. And again, just talk to people, engage, have fun. If you go to shows, talk to people. They're there for the same reason you are.
Yeah.
So go hang out with them, go talk to them. And I think that's the best way as a community to kind of just build back up and kind of restore ourselves to kind of that. I think the 80s was kind of that, if you're talking metal wise, that was like the golden era, as you know very well.
Right.
And then since then, like I think we got a lot of talented bands, as I mentioned, Ice Nine Kills, Ginger, like we got some great, bands who are coming up that, well, I say coming up, they've been around for like 10 years, but you know what I mean, that like in the more
Yeah.
recent decade, we have these bands. So again, show your support and check them out. And even if they're not your fan, you might at least like a couple of their songs.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the thing, showing the support. They will not make money. You listen to them on Spotify. That is for sure. So
What that half penny really comes in handy.
it does. It does. I mean, even Metallica probably couldn't live off of their streaming alone. That's crazy to think about. But Matt, thank you, my man, for coming on the show. Can you please tell everyone where they can find you?
Of course, I am the host of Super Cool Radio. We are on main focus is obviously YouTube, Super Cool Radio, but also got Facebook, Instagram. We're also on Rumble. We're on Spotify for we can actually. I'm not even monetized on Spotify, so there you go. But we are on there. We're also on Apple Podcasts, a lot of other audio platforms. But yeah, almost anywhere you either listen to music or watch music videos, I'm there. And if you like what I do, if you like any of the insight I gave today, make sure to check out, give me a follow, give a subscribe if you're inclined.
Yes, and certainly if you guys enjoy listening to interviews, watching interviews, Matt is the guy at Super Cool Radio. He always impressed me with how many interviews he pumps out a week. Now lately it has slowed down just a tad because he's been busy with life, but man, the the quality and quantity is there with the interviews. So certainly check them out, guys. Check out Super Cool Radio. But Matt, my man, thank you again for coming on, and we will have you on again soon. All right.
I appreciate it. Thank you as always.
You got it, man. And guys, let us know in the comments what you think heavy metal is. What are some of your thoughts on some of the points that we brought up?
Talk to me.
And until next time, guys, that's Matt from Super Cool Radio. I'm Trevor Crash Knight. Stay out of that collateral damage, and we will see you guys later.
Yeah, I wrote that. It's called I Want to Rock Your Body. And then in parentheses it says to the break of dawn.